Greetings Aries and welcome to your year 2024 deep dive astrology and horoscope forecast for the sun or the ascendant. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to briefly outline how I'm going to structure this video. To begin with, we need to look at the eclipses which occurred in October 2023 because they provide an overlap for the first 4 months of the new year. One of them is very much to do with relating, the other one very much to do with loot and resources. Intriguing. But also as we go into each new year, at that very moment that 2024 begins, we have a solar return for your sign. This provides a snapshot of what you can expect as a background energy for the whole of the year. And that is particularly intriguing. Your resources sector within that chart is looking encouraging, but there are going to be some issues to do with your need for expansion that need to knit in with another part of your situation that's very much to do with the most sensitive part of your life and your experiences, the 12th house, which is where Saturn and Neptune will remain for the whole of this year. But then as we go into the year, we have another lunar eclipse, and this occurs when the sun is in your sign on the 25th of March, and this is going to be around relationship matters again. But the 8th of April sees a total solar eclipse in your sign, which is truly exciting, and that links to Mercury. But Mercury is in retrograde when this occurs. Mercury this year is going to go through a series of fiery retrogrades, apart from a brief passage through the sign of Virgo, which is earthy. I will explain all of this. But we also have a new eclipse series coming in September, featuring on the axis between Pisces and Virgo. But by the 2nd of October, we get another solar eclipse once more in your relating sector. So really excited to share that with you. I will go through all the dates for those Mercury retrogrades, but what about your desire for achievement? That's really underlined by the role of your ruler Mars. So I'm going to really explore that with you. But Mars is going to be going into a retrograde, as it does every 2.5 years, just as this year comes to a close. But what about the psychological dimension? I've hinted about Saturn and Neptune, but the impact of them will be much greater when they're in retrograde, so I will share that with you too. Now, transformation comes through the tiny but potent and powerful planet, which is Pluto. And it is going to return to the sign of Aquarius on the 21st of January. And at that point will be conjunct the sun. So a huge moment for us all collectively, but it is going to be moving back into Capricorn. So I need to share that with you. That occurs from the 2nd of September, but it does emerge back into Aquarius by the end of the year. And what about luck? Well, Jupiter, as I mentioned, is in your sector of everyday resources and money at the start of this year, which is delicious, but it's going to be moving into your sector of relationships from the 26th of May, but those relationships you have on an everyday basis. So it's quick, interactive connections with neighbours, with siblings, through technology, the text messages and the emails we send. But if you've got something that you want to convey to a wider audience, the last 8 months of this year can be really exciting. And what about your love life, Aries? Well, that's a crucial matter for sure. So I'm going to look at the progress of Venus, particularly through your 5th and 7th houses, and also the Leo new moon in your 5th house of marriage. And this is the higher connection around romance. That's forging a really beautiful link with the North Node in your sign. So much information to share with you. Please stay with me for all of this. But if you are new to my channel, I'd be honoured if you would subscribe. This is very much a community. If you have any thoughts, please share them in the comments section. I do try to interact with each one. If you're a returning visitor, it's lovely to have you with me once more. I'd just like to share with you a very special opportunity. If you're watching this video in year 2023, you can order your year 2024 personal horoscope forecast based on your unique birth data, and I will prepare for you the rest of year 2023 free of charge. If you're ordering within year 2024, you will get a full 12 months from the exact time of your order. You will also, my special package, get 30% off and your character analysis report, your life roadmap. This will help you to understand the patterns that have repeated themselves in your situation, help you to seize upon the opportunities and get a much more intimate understanding of some of the challenges and how you can work with them future forwards in a more effective way. Please see beneath this video for more information. So Aries, as we make our way into year 2024, we just need to be mindful of the two eclipses which occurred in October, which provide a follow-in wind, a backdrop energy, which goes on for the first 4 months of 2024. The first one on the 14th of October, very much to do with relationships, the 7th house, but also very close to the South Node. So there could be some issues that permeate from that event that are to do with where perhaps your relationships haven't been quite as satisfying or successful. But there is also opportunity. I don't see the 7th and 1st houses as being necessarily mutually exclusive. So you can grow your understanding of how to connect with people successfully. Sometimes it's all about boundaries, setting our own boundaries, but also respecting others. So the first house, where the North Node is about you actualizing your individual gifts. It's almost like having an extra ascendant, and it's going to be there supporting you right through to the end of January 2025. So if you have felt that your talents have not really reached the audience that you want, or you haven't given yourself the time and space to really invest in your individual needs, the North Node will surely help you, along with the solar eclipse in your sign on the 8th of April this year. But this eclipse is also asking you to be mindful of where you connect to others. So that can be where we compete, it can be where we collaborate, but it can also be in traditional astrology to do with the people we have to engage with, who we may not necessarily find that easy to tussle with, are open enemies, as it's known. But I feel that that can generally be a very healing eclipse for you if you want to find a better balance between representing yourself accurately, but also improving your connections to others. But the lunar eclipse, which occurred on the 28th of October, was the last in the series between Taurus and Scorpio, and this one occurs in Taurus whilst the Sun is in Scorpio. So Taurus energy is very much to do with stability. It can be to do with our self-worth, our values, the foundations in our lives, obviously money, sensuality, the appreciation of good things in life. Can also be to do with fashion and just enjoying either very earthy things like homegrown vegetables or organics, or a little bit of lush. But of course, in the lunar eclipse, we have an opposition. So the more disruptive energies of Scorpio, which, because of the planet of change, Pluto, the new ruler, and the traditional ruler, the rather direct and confrontational Mars, they're pushing something into the open, and it may be about resources. So obviously a big reset's going on for everybody, and year 2022, particularly the eclipse which occurred on the 8th of November, was mightily disruptive because of the role of Uranus, the North Node, but also their relationship to Saturn, the planet of limitation. So I feel that what this lunar eclipse is perhaps giving you an opportunity to do as you come into this new year is have a new realism about finding the balance between everyday money but also shared and longer term resources. But as you come into the new year, I'm showing on the screen with you now your solar return. And there are some delights, to be honest, and particularly following on from that more earthy theme in terms of that lunar eclipse. So the first thing I'd like to share with you is that the sun is at 10 degrees and 2 minutes in Capricorn, as it always would be at midnight on the first day of each year. And it's forging a really very enterprising alliance to the planet of trade, Jupiter, and that's in house 2. House 2 can be about money, Jupiter can be about fortune, but if you look across the heavens in house 6, we have the moon. The moon's very much to do with our home, our security, nurture, protectiveness and so on. And it's in the practical and precise sign of Virgo, which wants us to purify things. So the three influences are linking together in a grand earth trine. And this solar return is going to provide a backdrop energy for the entirety of year 2024 for you. So it may be a bit of a latent influence at times, because obviously we have the moving planets throughout the year, and critically you have your natal chart and how transits above are interacting with that. And there are also some other techniques that astrologers use, such as progressions and directions, and solar returns based on the individual birthdays. But this chart does suggest that you can grapple with your resources in a very productive way this year. But the key, I feel, is going to be expectations, because if you look in house 9, your ruler Mars is aligned with Mercury. But Mercury is actually in retrograde. So the last 9 days of 2023 slammed on the brakes. It was the only fire Mercury retrograde of the year. All the rest of them were Earth. So as we come into this new year, when it comes to deals, contracts, anything to do with overseas interactions, the 9th house, Sagittarius, will need care. Mercury technically debilitated along with this retrograde. But because it's next to Mars, that's going to give you a lot of thrust. And this can be very good to promote your interests and have great enthusiasm about expanding your world. You can also see Venus, the planet of love, but also of loot, also in house 9. So yes, Mercury's in retrograde, yes, it's detrimented in Sagittarius, but that, on the face of it, is a pretty optimistic set of influences. The catch is the two players in the sign of Pisces. So Saturn is going to be in Pisces along with Neptune for the whole of this year, and this is a much more psychological influence. And you can see that Neptune squares up with Mars and Mercury, which can create distortion, unreality. You could even encounter someone this year who's not very honest. But also Saturn squaring with Venus. So although that grand Earth trine between the Sun, Jupiter and the Moon gives you the opportunity to grapple with the resources side of your situation this year, you can't be too gung-ho in your approach if you really want to make this work out for you. So the Sagittarius energy is asking you to be more speculative and perhaps look at situations that may be more to do with trying different things, being more experimental, but just be very conscious of the role of Saturn and Neptune through the whole of this year, because it's very important to understand your psychological and emotional reality, but also limitations, and that the 12th house can be hidden enemies. So someone may present themselves to you this year, either romantically, Venus, in terms of conversation or communication, Mercury, or in terms of physical attraction, Mars, who seems the real deal. But look beneath the surface, because what is being presented may not be the reality. The other thing I want you to look out for this year could be very positive for you, to be honest. The midpoint between the Sun in Capricorn and the Moon in Virgo is at 8 degrees in Scorpio. So that's a kind of echo of that lunar eclipse which occurred on the 28th of October. So the midpoint in Scorpio is very deep. It's very much to do with desire. This could be in a romantic or sexual context. It could be to do with money. But the great news, if we count round from that midpoint, around the chart, we see that Jupiter ends up just about on the 7th house cusp, between the 6th and the 7th. It's a couple of degrees out. I feel that could be fortunate for you around a job or around a relationship situation, as long as you stay very grounded in your approach. Now, I just want to take you forwards now. So let's just spin forwards through to the 25th of March, because we have a lunar eclipse which occurs once more in Libra. But again, this is the opposition. But this one is giving you a chance to think whether those relationships are going as you hoped based on the solar eclipse in Libra that panned out on the 14th of October. If you're not happy, I think the tension will start to build up a couple of weeks before, and it could go on for some time after then. And it could see a relationship come out of your world that's not truly right for you. But the key is the total solar eclipse, which occurs on the 8th of April, is in your sign, and that's going to give you a determination to really grab the energy of that node and make sure that you are manifesting what makes you totally unique. The problem, Aries, is that it is very close to a conjunction with Mercury, which is in a retrograde in your sign. So Mercury is going to be in Aries for 10 weeks from the 10th of March to the 15th of May. So together with that total solar eclipse of the 8th of April, you're going to go through a lot of thinking about what it is that you need to do to come into the moment to actualize the riches that you have to share. Now, Saturn and Neptune could be providing somewhat of a handbrake. That handbrake could come not so much from outside, although it's possible, of course, 12th house, hidden enemies. It could be more to do with inside your thinking, your fears, the own limitations that you're creating upon yourself. So I think there can be a lot of contemplation that goes on across those 10 weeks. You could start some new things. Some of them may go forwards and get really embedded and gain traction. Some of them won't necessarily be long lasting. The actual retrograde is from the 1st of April through to the 25th of April. So obviously it does encapsulate that eclipse, as I mentioned. But if you do start some things new and they don't all work out, don't beat yourself up about it, because this is a year when being a little bit more enterprising around your ideas, because of the focus on the fire signs, is sometimes we have to take into account that if we do use the power of fire, there may be some things that get extinguished, that don't get enough oxygen to survive. So it's an element that's very exciting and it's very daring, but not necessarily every single opportunity or every single plan or project or strand that you try to implement is going to last and be ongoing. So just be aware there could be quite a lot of rethinking, recalibration that goes on around that eclipse in your sign. So the following 6 months could see some really powerful new starts for you, but you may have to wait and see whether some of them really get embedded. Now I'll just share with you the partial lunar eclipse which occurs in Pisces on the 18th of September, because that is very complex, because it is conjunct Neptune. Now Neptune is a planet which is very much to do with the more spiritual domain, but it can be to do with heightening our sensitivities. And in that sense, it can be a force for good. And since 2012, you may feel that you've got a lot more in touch with things like personal development, like anything to do with divination, these things have become much more intriguing and interesting to you. It's just that from the 2nd of July, Neptune goes retrograde. So when that partial lunar eclipse occurs on the 18th of September, Neptune is retracing its steps. So this could be a time when your physical vitality is a little bit challenged. So just be aware of getting a good balance between, the physical things we can do, like good exercise, good diet, nutrition, get into bed early for some nights of the week, but also feeding our soul. Very important to do that on that lunar eclipse. But then just finally, that annular solar eclipse, which occurs on the 2nd of October, is back in Libra, and it's back in your sector of relating. But this one is conjunct Mercury. So there can be some really exciting conversations that unfold in the last 3 months of 2024 for you. And whereas the total solar eclipse and its conjunction with the retreating Mercury on the 8th of April may create some things that go forward, some things that don't and fizzle out, I think there's a great opportunity to really reach an accord. So if your love life is important to you, that is a very exciting eclipse for you. But let's just look about your situation in terms of your ruler Mars. So Mars is going to be in your sign from the 30th of May to the 9th of June, and that will boost anything you have started with the help of that total solar eclipse and Mercury. But it really will help you to put your foot to the floor and be much more driven in terms of your approach, and much less fearless, because Saturn and Neptune in the 12th house could at times bring up a little bit of anxiety and inhibition. But Mars does go retrograde on the 6th of December in the sign of Leo. Now, of course, Leo is very much to do with where we can show off, and can be very much to do with our social situation as well. But fortunately for you, it's very, very late in the year. So in terms of just boxing in the events of this year, I don't feel that retrograde is going to be quite so influential. Now, I've mentioned about communications and the fact that Mercury is going to be going retrograde for 10 weeks from the 10th of March to the 15th of May. But the psychological implication of Saturn is emphasised more when from the 29th of June to the 15th of November it is retrograde. So if there are some things in the past, or there's been some sad separations, or people that are no longer with you, you could find that along with Neptune's retrograde from the 2nd of July to the 7th of December, there could be quite a lot of opportunities to revisit and check things out. If you've ever considered therapy, or talking to someone, or downloading information which helps you to understand what makes you tick at a much deeper level, this could be a very valuable time. I mentioned before about Pluto. Well, Pluto is the planet of transformation and higher truths, but it can also be to do with the collective in the sign of Aquarius. So it moves back there on the 21st of January. But for you, this is the sector of your friendships, but also your future planning. This future hopes could go through a little bit of a stalled period from the 2nd of December to the 20th of December, because it goes back into the 10th house. You may feel yourself a bit torn between sticking with what you've known in the past and embracing something that's new and fresh. But in terms of straightforward good fortune, the planet that governs that all day long, of course, is Jupiter. And Jupiter blesses you right at the start of this year with that solar return in that wonderful grand Earth trine with the Sun and also the Moon, and in your second house of Lute. But then its move on the 26th of May into your third house means that the way you express yourself, the bubbliness you have, the belief in your ideas, your ability to cheer people up that you encounter. If you're thinking about a new mode of transport, I feel that wait until the 26th of May to buy something, because I feel then your chances of getting something that's more suitable for you will be emphasised. If you are someone who wants to get a little bit more physically active, Jupiter can help that as well, but your mind is going to be switched on equally. Now, it is true that Jupiter in Gemini is technically debilitated, but for you, I feel that this is going to be a very bubbly transit. There can be improved relations with people that you live around, perhaps live next door to, or interactions within your community. But love life is something that many of us spend a lot of our time thinking about. Venus is in Leo from the 5th of July, but there's also a Leo new moon on the 4th of August, which forges a beautiful trine to the North Node and also a sextile to Jupiter. I feel that it could be a conversation around the 4th of August in the following month, which really is spellbinding. There's also a lovely transition of Venus through your opposite sign of Libra, your 7th house, from the 29th of August to the 23rd of September. That too can provide an awesome opportunity to connect to someone. And remember, you're also going to have that second solar eclipse in your sector of relating on the 2nd of October. So that just about sums up the overall structure of this year for you, Aries. I do think it brings lots of opportunities to refresh and start a new phase of your life, but you will need to also steer down and almost decommission certain parts of your old life or your old self through the auspices of Saturn and Neptune being in your 12th house. Just so you know, they are arriving in your sign in year 2025, and Pluto will move into Aquarius at the end of year 2024 for the long term, and Uranus will also move into Gemini in year 2025. Now, it is true that Saturn and Neptune will inverse and revert back into Pisces later that year, but a lot of exciting stuff is coming through for you in 25, and I feel that 24 is very much about setting the scene, really making sure that that access between your sign and Libra is working efficiently for you. It's making sure you're getting the nourishment you need as an individual, but also developing the relationships that are based on respect and have a genuine simpatico to where you're coming from. But in terms of your resources, as long as you are cautious and don't really be too freewheeling with that collision of energy between Sagittarius and also your 12th house. Don't be too open or too trusting. If you go steady, your resources can stabilize over this year, and better than you might imagine. It's been a real pleasure being with you. Thank you so much for joining me. I wish you all the best. I'd be honored if you would like, comment, share, or subscribe.